Welcome back to the channel. This is Gilles TV here, folks, and today we got some MLB talk about the Blue Jays. But before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, and thank you guys for all the support on the channel. It's been really greatly appreciated by Clemox and myself. Now let's get to it. Earlier this week, the Jays made a surprising trade, trading Teoscar Hernandez, getting some bullpen help from the Mariners and Eric Swanson. And, a couple weeks ago, it's kind of came up from time to time over the couple weeks, is what are the Jays going to do about the three catchers they have? And, for me, when Ross Atkins says, hey, there are interest on all three of them, which trade helps the team will determine if we trade a catcher or not. Well, that got me thinking. You have three catchers on the MLB roster next year. You cannot have Gabriel Moreno down in the AAA. That's a no-go. He is in the big leagues unless he gets injured or something, knock on wood that he doesn't. So that begs the question, who do the Toronto Blue Jays, if they do, trade away? Well, for me, the untouchable is Gabriel Moreno. That's a no-doubter. He's untouchable. He's staying. So that leaves you Alexander Kirk, or Danny Jansen. Well, for me, it really depends on what the Blue Jays want. Do they want more defensive guy, where Danny Jansen's a pretty solid catcher, catching guys, stealing bases, and all that, or do they want the bat of Kirk offensively? But Danny does have those spurts where he goes and can have a hot streak of hitting home runs, consecutive games hitting doubles. It's a complex situation, which is a good situation for the Toronto Blue Jays, is they don't need to, but trading away a catcher is going to fill up a hole that they need, and either if it's, first base, or not first base, second base, bullpen, utility player, that's it. We got to remember, too, is we don't have an outfielder now, which Blue Jays have been linked to a couple fielders of late, which I did a video on. Go check that out. But they've been linked to a couple outfielders. Maybe Danny Jansen's a trade for that, or Kirk's a trade for one of those. We also got to remember, I don't think it's a utility player or an infielder at all, because we got Whit Merrifield who can do everything. We got Cavan Biggio. We got Espinal that can slide to third base if needed, if Chapman needs a day off. So we're good on infielders. So if there was a trade that the Blue Jays needed to do to move a catcher, it's either Kirk or Jansen, in my opinion, unless they're in on a superstar, he's an all-star player, then okay, maybe Moreno's the one to go at that point. But right now, Moreno, for me, is untouchable for teams to even try and get. And if they trade him for something useless, fans are going to be asking a lot of questions. Now, let's get to this again, so do you trade a catcher for bullpen? You could. Or do you try and fill out that starting rotation now that Ross Stripling left? Kikuchi's, not a starter. After last season, he's not. Ryu, I don't know what's the deal with him, if he's still injured, if he's coming back. But Ryu's not a number 4. If anything, he's a number 5 now. He's getting up there in his playing time. So what do the Jays do? Who do the Jays go and get while using a catcher as a trade bait? It's all questions that I hope we find an answer to. I'm okay with staying with 3 catchers because Moreno can play, I believe it was left field, center field, and first base and third base. So Moreno is more of a utility player, but is the best position for him at the catcher. And you need his bat in the lineup. After seeing what he did in 69 at bats last season, I know that's a little sample. He did pretty good. Now let's get in the stats. And for me, if the Jays were to trade someone, it would probably have to be Kirk. And I know a lot of people might be like, well, Kirk's younger. I get that. That's a valid argument. But Danny Jansen brings more to the defensive game. And we have seen spurts of Danny Jansen. His bat is coming around. So it's really hard to say out of the two, which one would you give up? And I'm leaning like fair, thin of the hair here to Kirk because it's that close. So we'll look at the stats from last year. Moreno, he had 69 at bats, had a 319 average with 1 home run, 7 RBIs, no stolen bases, and OPS of 733. So he had 30, give or take, he had 33 hits or so out of that 69 at bats, and that's huge with 1 home run and 7 RBIs. Let's go into details here. He had 2 extra base hits, so a lot of singles. He gets in on play, grounded into double plays. He had two. Um, he had 1 double, 1 home run. He had 4 walks, 8 strikeouts, and he had a 377 slugging. So not bad numbers, but like I said, really small sample size. It's hard to compare him to the other two just because of that. But we know he's going to be in the MLB next year, just a matter of when and how they use him. Now, Kirk had, a pretty good postseason with 375 and 8 at bats as an average, but he had no home runs, no RBIs, no stolen bases. And postseason wise, he's had 11 at bats for a 364 average. Last season, he hit 285 with 14 home runs, 63 RBIs, and 470 at bats. Kirk has an average of 278 over his career and 659 at bats with 23 home runs and 90 RBIs. Like I said, he's still young. He's 24 years old. Well, that is one reason to actually keep him because he's still getting better. Danny Jansen also hit 375 and 8 at bats. He had 2 RBIs in the postseason. He's a 385 postseason hitter and 13 at bats with 2 home runs, 4 RBIs. He didn't play much this season due to injury. 215 at bats. He has 260 average or 260 average, 15 home runs, 44 RBIs, and 1 stolen base. Over his career, he's a 223 hitter in 947 at bats, 48 home runs, 143 RBIs. So even with Danny Jansen being 27 years old, he still hasn't passed the 1,000 at bats mark due to a couple injuries. So it's really hard to sit here and say, "Oh, he's the clear cut to get traded." Well, all three of these guys brings something to the table. And I'm saying Moreno's off the trade list here because he is younger. He's the youngest. He is our prospect in a sense, the Toronto Blue Jays prospect. That it's hard to say. Do you go with the 3 year younger than of Kirk and hopefully he turns out to be better than Danny Jansen is right now or in 3 years? It's hard to say, but that is it for me rumbling on. Let me know in the comments who you think the Blue Jays should trade if there was a trade to be needed from the catcher position. I'll get back to you on the next one. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is Gilles TV here on Clemhawks. Have a good one.